Yes, please. Just in the nick of.
Mayor Weber, you are live.
We are live. Thank you. And you are perfectly on time. Thank you. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the governing body. It is July 31st. It is roughly 5:07 p.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Lee Garcia, salute to the New Mexico flag led by Councilor Chavez, and an invocation and then remembrances, and Councilor Castro will lead in that. Please rise as you're able.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
La bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, simbología y amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. Buenas noches a todos, muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Vamos a hablar un poco sobre la vivienda y quiero hablar un poco de lo que dice la ONU acerca de la vivienda digna. Considera cada vez más como una mercancía. La vivienda es sobre todo un derecho humano. En virtud del derecho internacional, el derecho a una vivienda adecuada extraña tener seguridad y a la tenacia del desarrollo. Entre aspas dice, la vivienda rara vez se trata como un derecho humano y la adopción de políticas y programas gubernamentales adecuados es lo más importante. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Counselor. Does anyone want to offer a remembrance? Counselor Faulkner?
Remembrance, but today on Rodeo and Airport Road, a panhandler was struck by a vehicle and is in critical condition. And so I would just like us all to send our prayers to that individual and to his family.
Thank you. Others? I would just take a minute to think of people in our community who are struggling, trying to make ends meet, dealing with problems of just illness, problems of lack of income, problems of family and friends, people who we've lost, people who we really reach out to try to support and give our hearts to as they try to make it through the day. We have people who need help, and we should try to help them. And we should do our very, very best to include everybody in Santa Fe. So let's take a minute and just pause to think of everyone in our community. Thank you, everybody. Madam Clerk, I know you are going to be here and remote at the same time for good reason. Thank you for zooming in. Could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to be virtual. Counselor Cassett?
Here.
Counselor Castro?
Presente.
Counselor Chavez?
Here.
Counselor Faulkner?
Here.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Here.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Present.
Counselor Lindell?
Here.
Counselor Romero Worth?
Here.
Mayor Weber?
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any changes to the agenda that you're aware of, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor, there's a recommendation to remove item 10A from the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda, removing item 10A as amended.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the agenda with item 10A removed, and there's a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Castro?
Sí.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. And Madam Clerk, what has been removed from the consent agenda, please?
Mayor, item 9O was removed by Counselor Michael Garcia.
All right, let's make a note that when we get there, we will take up item 9O. Thank you.
Move to approve as amended.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call a roll on that, please?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Castro,
Sí.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. So with that, Madam Clerk, let's begin with item 8A. If you can announce that and make sure everybody knows what it is, and then we will bring the presenters to the podium. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
8A is a presentation. It's an energy and water conservation project completion report. And we will have a Public Works Director, Regina Wheeler, and Project Administrator, Senior Karen Gross here to present.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Gross. I'm a Facilities Project Administrator Senior. I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and members of the governing body for this opportunity to present on the Energy and Water Conservation Project, which has often been referred to as the Citywide Solar Project. This project started in 2019 with a $925,000 legislative appropriation. And it is ending with a whole lot of savings in terms of water and energy, as well as renewable energy from the solar. This has been a very complex project. It's involved unique financing. We've had a lot of facilities in the project. We've interacted with the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management to get leases for federal land. We've done easements with the county. We've had agreements with BDD and other partners, as well as PNM. And there are a lot of different technologies that were installed as a part of this project. I'm very proud to have completed installation of this project along with Year Out Energy and their subcontractors, because this helps the city of Santa Fe take another big step towards achieving sustainability. I did want to add a note. We had anticipated receiving about $230,000 in utility rebates and incentives as a result of this project. We actually got $374,000. So the contractor that brought the expertise, that designed and implemented these energy saving solutions and did it within budget, is the only New Mexico-based energy services company on the state's approved list of vendors. That is Year Out Energy Services, LLC. Tara Trafton with Year Out Energy is here to present on the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Mayor and members of the governing body. Year Out Energy is proud to have been a part of this project. We provide water and energy conservation, auditing, and construction services across the state, ranging all the way to from Alamogordo to Rio Arriba County, Gallup to Texaco. So truly covering the entire state, trying to make a big impact with projects large and small. We work closely with the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Division, as well as the Office of the State Engineer, who provide oversight on these types of projects, which are commonly called energy performance contracts. Year Out Energy started in Albuquerque in 2014 and was born out of the largest mechanical contractor in the state. Since then, we've been working on expanding our capabilities to provide greater impact to the state, drive deeper savings for our customers. We really love supporting our communities to reduce their utility expenses as well as their environmental impact. We believe in delivering practical solutions and meaningful projects with confident outcomes. We guarantee the results and work to build long-term partnerships with our customers. And with that, I'm pleased to share the results of our work together. When we first started this project, we met with city staff to understand what were the really driving factors and most pressing issues for the city. The city has aggressive targets to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, and we determined that these 5 points really sort of highlight and best summarize those objectives. So those points are save water and energy, achieve community sustainability goals, reduce utility and operational costs, increase use of renewable energy, and achieve measured and verified outcomes. Not mentioned on the previous slide, but alluded to by Karen, was how do we leverage this $925,000 legislative appropriation to drive a bigger impact for the city? So looking at how can we leverage that money through a holistic facility approach, identifying additional savings, funneling those towards renewable energy expansion, and basically implementing additional renewable energies across the city. We were able to get a 14-to-1 return on the dollars invested, implementing a $15 million project that implemented nearly 3 megawatts of solar and is saving the city 17% on your utility costs at the facilities where we implemented our project scope. So you can see it's kind of hard to read there, but the big chunk of green at the top is essentially the development phase of an energy performance contract called the investment grade audit. The longer green bar at the bottom, that was really the implementation phase, and that big red bar was COVID. So during the project, we were obviously impacted somewhat by COVID with supply chain issues. The silver lining that came out of that was during this pandemic, the Biden-Harris administration implemented the Inflation Reduction Act, which has a provision for solar tax credits for public agencies, which the city can now take benefit of and is in the process of pursuing. So this is just an overview of some key figures for the project. There were 22 facilities that were looked at, 17 pumping sites, 23 solar arrays were implemented across the city, 7.3 million kilowatt hours are being saved per year, which is roughly 850 households worth of energy. And we're missing a zero there, but 2 million gallons of water per year. And with that, we've prepared a small video to share with you, which highlights some of the improvements and impacts of the project. So here you can see some of the facilities, which were city facilities, water department facilities, as well as Buckman direct diversion facilities. And it was true collaboration between all entities to make this project possible. Here we go. Yeah, now you can actually hear. We didn't get a chance to test that beforehand. Here you can see again, just a summary of the project scope. So 2.76 megawatts of solar, 10,000 plus LED lighting fixtures, 800 low flow domestic water features, building envelope remediation, transformers, repairs to solar carports, a new roof, and some utility rate changes. This list is far too long for me to read, but this is the location and sizes of the solar arrays that were implemented. And again, the total capacity installed was nearly 3 megawatts at 2.76. So the guaranteed savings, which guaranteed savings are a part of energy performance contracting, are the 7,300 megawatt hours, 28,000 therms, 2 million gallons of water, 27,000 million MMBTUs, and then you can see the impact over project life, which is significantly larger. Here's the impact in terms of environmental context. So you can see 6.7 million pounds of CO2 avoided, equivalent to 590 vehicles removed from the roads, 840 acres of trees planted, 3.2 million pounds of coal not burned. And again, over the life, it becomes 121 million pounds of CO2 avoided. So very impressive. And that's everything that we have for you today. I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to work with the city. We really appreciate the collaboration and look forward to being your partner going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I know everybody on the governing body would like to either comment and or ask questions. I'm interested in kicking it off with just everybody commenting on this great partnership. I'd like to, you used the word collaboration in your closing remarks, and clearly it has been a successful partnership. I'd love to know more about how that partnership worked and what our takeaways are, not just from the projects, which look really rewarding and gratifying in terms of our sustainability goals across the board. But I'm also interested in the managerial partnership that was forged and how that worked.
Well, it's certainly been the biggest project I've ever undertaken. And pretty big learning curve on it, but Year Out made a lot of the aspects of my job much easier with the expertise that they brought to the project.
And I'll get into a little bit, I guess, of the weeds on the sort of project management and how we collaborate. One of the really big benefits of this program too is the state oversight that is part of this. So when we would provide proposals to the city, the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department provided a third-party reviewer who reviewed calculations and scopes of work for cost reasonableness, accuracy, things along those lines. And in working with the team to develop the project, we had regular biweekly meetings to review sort of progress, how things are moving along, milestone meetings to make sure that we were on the right path moving forward. And then when we moved to construction, there was on-site super and regular check-ins with Karen and the rest of the city staff to make sure that that was progressing as well, even though it was a difficult time to be trying to build things.
Thank you. Director
Eric,
Wheeler?
Thank you so much, Mayor and members of the governing body. Thank you so much for highlighting the partnership. This project process is defined by the state of New Mexico as the best practice for managing energy conservation projects. And a big part of the collaboration comes together with the city listed 40 facilities actually in the beginning, and then Year Out does an investment grade audit that Tara mentioned. And that's where they actually go through the facilities, comb through our utility bills for a couple of years on each of those facilities, understand what our usage rates are, what the space looks like, how is that building being used, and then they make recommendations from there about what are financially and physically feasible improvements that we could make to the facility. Is solar an option for this one? Is LED lighting essential for saving energy? We actually did transformer conversions that saved a whole bunch of energy because we had those buzzing old hot transformers outside of some buildings. So it's the expertise that Year Out brings in partnership with the knowledge of the facilities that the facilities team brings, and then you bring it together and you get high impact for your dollar and a project. The other piece that I'll mention is that COVID hit right after we awarded the contract for construction. And luckily enough, because Year Out has so much experience with this type of work, they bought all of our solar modules before that tanker got stuck in the Panama Canal. And right after that, and there was all of these tariff issues, and we had our panels on hand. So that's one of the ways that we were able to keep the project in budget, is that Year Out has that expertise with renewable energy and being an old mechanical house, right? One of the largest houses that does HVAC. They know these things. They know what those supply chains look like. They know how you got to beat the numbers on getting a good product. So the partnership just kept on going and going and going and going. And I just want to also highlight that the airport got 2 arrays, if you might have noticed on the And that's for 133 kilowatts, I think they got. So that's some of the partnership insight.
Great, thank you. Counselor Lindell, you had your hand up?
Wow, what a project. Here's the thing. I'm here all the time and I had no idea of how big this project was and what a massive success this project is. I can't imagine that very many people in town know about it. I hope that they find out about it because this was a huge project and we pulled it off and got through COVID. And I mean, who would know that the tanker was stuck in the Panama Canal? Who would know? But I'm terrifically proud of this project, although I certainly didn't have so much as a fingerprint on it. But I'm really, really proud of the city team and our partnership with Year Out. It's a big deal. So kudos, thank you. You deserve fireworks over this and applause, and I wish we had cake for more. That wasn't totally altruistic, but it's I mean, it's something to be so excited about. This is a big deal and you guys did it. And it's a mammoth benefit to this city. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, go ahead, Counselor Castro.
Yes, thank you so much. Just want to echo that. This is a project completion report. Does that mean that we are no longer in contract with you for other projects, or is this just one project?
Thank you, Mayor, Councilor Castro, for that question. We thought it might come up. So there is a long tail on this project. It's called the measurement and verification phase because Year Out has guaranteed these savings. So that's really cool. But then we've also taken, this is our first giant step, but we see some more steps of opportunity to partner. One of them is to have Year Out help us understand our massive quantity of utility bills. So they're going to help us get that organized into a portal so we can actually see trends. They're going to help us verify our utility bills, make sure we're getting billed the right amount, that there's actual meters at these buildings. So we're excited about that. That's actually partnership with finance has looked at that and said, yeah, we'd really like to do that together. We've also been awarded a FEMA grant for microgrids on essential facilities to help the city be able to charge itself without needing diesel fuel in cases of emergencies so that we can run essential facilities. And we're about to have a planning meeting for that coming up next week. FEMA has funded the design or this investment grade audit first portion, kind of like that 925,000 from the state, but this time it came from FEMA. And then they're also very interested in funding the construction because they're having military bases are doing this as well. Like in the case of an emergency where you can't get water or power from the outside, how do you take care of your people? And that's the thing that we'll be undertaking with that. So we are looking towards the next steps.
Wonderful. And I think you anticipated my next question was, are there more federal dollars available for some of these projects? And so I was wondering, and this might not be a question you could answer, do we know how close we are to independence?
It's, it's surprising. We've done a lot. But if you remember from the sustainability report that Allison Long put out just recently, I think we're at like maybe 20% renewably powered, something like that, which we kind of thought this alone would be 20%. But we use a lot of energy as a city, right? And so we did take on, though, we added a whole megawatt at Buckman Direct Diversion. And the water energy nexus, right? It takes a lot of energy to get that water out of the river through the treatment and into the city. So I think that makes a total of like 3.5 megawatts they have out there now. And then we did add another megawatt to the water system where there's pumps at the different well stations, as well as pumps to move the water. So those are good areas to really focus on. And then of course, our buildings, are not huge energy users, but there's quite a number of them. So I think we're at about 20% renewable. Do you know if that's in the ballpark? Yeah, total city. Yeah. I think it's
No worries. We can follow up later, but thank you so much for your work. No further questions.
Thank you. Counselor Mayor Worth.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for the work. I remember the night I think we approved the ask for that legislative money. And so fun to see the progress over the years, and the scope is obviously substantial. I am wondering if you could take the data that's in the video and just throw it into a memo and shoot it to all of us, because I would agree with Councilor Lindell. I think this is a really important completion and important impact, and I'd like to have the data at my fingertips to be able to reference and brag about. So congratulations to you all, and thanks. This is super, super important work and really exciting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Others? Other hands? Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And, you know, aside from the benefits of clean energy and the benefits that we're getting there, you know, when we take a look at a project like this, there's obviously a cost to it. And how do we determine what our break-even point is? You know, even though it's a grant and there was money, but, you know, how we take a look at our utility bills, and I think you touched base on this, how what it costs us to operate that facility and having this type of power supply. I know, and just kind of leading into like when it's proposed for homes, they say, okay, you pay this much utilities every month, every year, and this is the cost savings, but this is the cost of the project, and so it washes out at the end. It also, at some point, provides power back to the grid, which you may get back in form of a credit. So I don't know if those type of things were looked at, and maybe if you can touch base a little bit there.
They were. Thank you so much, Mayor. Councilor Garcia, you've obviously studied the issue a little bit. Those are exactly the parameters that are looked at. So when I said in the beginning that we did an investment grade audit to determine where renewable energy was feasible, both financially and physically, financially meant that we would pay equal to or less than what we pay the utility grid utility for electricity. So these arrays are producing electricity at the same price as we were paying the grid or less. And in some cases, significantly less. We only had $925,000 of grant money. We had $15 million of private investment in this project, which is paid back by those energy savings. So it was essential, as Tara had mentioned, that we did the calculations in advance to verify that the cost of the improvements would be equal to or less than the energy savings. And so it is a wash, as you say, but because the city's committed to being sustainable and reducing our carbon impact, to get to reduce our carbon impact for free, basically, is what this does. You pay back the loan with the savings of energy, and so it is a wash. As far as selling energy to the grid from the projects, most of these won't do a lot of that because they're systems that are utilized highly during the daytime, which is when they're generating a lot of electricity. So we're using it as soon as it's generated. Also, we designed the size of the systems to be at about 80% of the usage of the facility. So we're not overproducing, and that there's a number of reasons to do that. And one of them is because it's the right investment. If you don't want to produce 110% of the energy you need, you don't need to build an array that big, right? So you run it like 60 to 80% depending on usage. And they really did look at seasonal usage and average use to make sure that we weren't over investing in the equipment. So yeah, those analyses that you point out are a core part of deciding where to build the arrays.
Thank you. And I think that it's important for people to understand that when we do stuff like this, not only are the reasons we are doing it is to have clean energy, but at the same time, it would have been a cost anyway. So good response. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Other comments or questions? I can't see Counselor Michael Garcia's hand. Is it up? Counselor, are you holding a hand up?
No, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for checking.
Okay. Well, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your report, also the work. I was listening to the comments and questions of my colleagues, and I think my summary is this checks at least 3 important boxes for the city. Number one, it checks our sustainability goals. We've said all along we want to be the most sustainable city in America. This is a really a validation of that goal. Secondly, it does check the economic box. It is a project that pays for itself and gets you the environmental benefits. And third, and maybe the reason I started by asking about the management piece, is that it ought to reassure the public that we are a city that can handle big, important, complex, technologically sophisticated projects. This is not a project that was delayed, deferred, or delivered outside the bounds of the program in spite of COVID. And if you're looking at the city's performance on an ongoing basis as an entity that can take on with partners challenging, difficult, and important public works projects, this project by itself should give everybody a lot of confidence that the city has the talent, has the managerial skill, and also has the methodologies to get big, tough, important projects delivered on time, on budget, with results that exceed expectations. And that's a tremendous achievement. So thank you for the work, and thank you, as Councilor Lindell said, thanks for spreading the word that these important projects are not only being done, but they're being done well, and they're being done in a way that benefits the people of Santa Fe. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Mayor, governing body.
Madam Clerk, where do we go next on our agenda?
Mayor, we'll move on to item 9O. It's a request for approval of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Professional Services Agreement with the Santa Fe Community Housing Trust in the total amount of $600,000 to support the development of Arroyo Oeste Phase 2 through June 30th, 2026.
And I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay, Councilor Castro needs to recuse herself. And we'll go to presentation in a minute. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, could I first ask for a point of order that we keep comments from the councilors to 10 minutes? So everyone has a chance to speak.
Okay, we'll try to adhere to our traditional 10-minute rule as we go forward. I want to get a motion, and then I'll get a presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Councilor Garcia to open up, since he pulled it off of consent.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, and Ms. Frank, do you want to, for the people who are watching and listening and may not be familiar with this item, you and perhaps Director Nelson can walk us through it, and then Councilor Michael Garcia took it from consent, so I'll turn the floor over to him to raise questions or points that he wants to discuss. Not sure the mic is working to your advantage.
How about now? Oh, that's
Much better.
much
Thank you. Yes.
So this is an item that should have been on last month. As you can see in the memo, there's a very clear description of how the Community Development Commission receives the applications, reviews everything for the annual cycle. So this is an item specifically that would defray the costs of construction. This is for Arroyo Este Phase 2. As you may have driven past, there has been a section that has been under construction for quite some time. This is it's the second part. There will be 20 homes total. And for this contract, the amount would be going towards those 8 homes because construction costs are always more than the actual cost that can be allowed per the pricing schedule. So this is to defray those costs in that section there. And again, it's for those 8 affordable homes going for households under 120% AMI.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Michael Garcia, if you can hear me, you have the floor, sir, to ask the questions that prompted you to pull it from consent.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the overview of how the resources will be utilized. I guess my first question is, these will be homes that are for sale. Am I correct in understanding that?
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Yes, for sale.
Okay. Do we have a range that the developer that will be selling these units will price these units for?
I would have to check the contract. I don't believe so right now. I know in terms of the size, it's definitely between 1 and 3 bedroom. So that would go according to the pricing schedule. I'd have to double check what that range would be. But this amount for this contract does not change that pricing. It just makes it so that it's possible for the developer to create these homes.
Okay, understandable, but I think, just for the pure sense that we're giving over $500,000, it'd be, I think the public deserves to understand how much these 8 units will be sold for, dependent on the size of the unit. Because I think when we're investing city resources, we should know what the end sale value is going to be. So if we can ask the developer for that, I would greatly appreciate that. And for future reference, if something like this comes before us, I would like for us to have that information on the front end, just because I want to make sure these units are ultimately affordable. I think given the high cost of housing in Santa Fe right now, that term affordable has been thrown around very, very loosely. And I'll be honest, $400,000 is not affordable. $300,000 is not affordable. Even $200,000 is not affordable. And so when we begin to invest these resources, I think we need to really understand what is the ultimate end product going to be. And so definitely would like to learn more about that. My next question revolves, I know this is part of that package that was RFP'd out, where there was $3 million that we haven't allocated yet from the reserve funding. And I guess my question is a bit broader than this item, but I just want to make sure we have the resources to approve this contract, because right now we haven't approved the $3 million. The big grand package is $3.87 million. And so I guess, can you tell me a little bit more about where the resources are coming from in regards to this expenditure? Do we have the 600 kind of within the trust fund right now? I know this has been a very tricky question to have responded to, but I guess my question is, how much money is currently in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. So I know that question came up a lot again with this contract, where it should have been the month before. I believe we actually do have someone from budget if they wanted to jump in with some of, oh, I see some walking with some of the specifics. But I think I wanted to reiterate as Andy's coming forward, is that as former Director Ladd had mentioned, these are all contracts that go through finance. They look through everything. Nothing would come before you without it. So even though this is an awkward month later, this was definitely prepared. That was not part of the delay today.
Mayor and Councilor Michael Garcia, can I add to the answer here too as well?
Let's get Mr.
Well, I think it's important, and I think Ms. Frank knows that these contracts have a provision in them that says that the funds have to be available. That gives it. Could you speak to that too as well? I mean, I think we do need to hear from our budget officer to Councilor Michael Garcia's question, but also just sort of the safety net that's in the contracts themselves that refers to making sure we can't do them if the funding isn't allocated. So if the governing body did not provide the $3 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, then we have an escape hatch essentially through the contract language. Can you speak to that?
Certainly. And I believe some of that is also just earlier in the process. So to walk back a little bit in the timeline, this is an RFA. This was released sometime in January. There was a lot of review in March to make sure there was adequate time so that people could respond to this opportunity. And as the contracts are made, there is some, pre-awards, there is this condition baked in that this has to be they have to understand that the funding could change. that this might not be fully available. I can try to find the exact provision in the contract, but this is pretty clear and we have a lot of returning applicants. I would say this applicant in particular, this is one that you have funded in the past, even in this cycle for a different program. So this is something that they should be pretty well aware of going forward as they're making their pro forma for projects like these.
Mr. Hopkins, did you want to try to add some additional information for Counselor Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Garcia, to answer your question, the amount of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund cash balance is approximately $8 million. That is all for past commitments that have not been paid out yet. They've experienced various delays, so some of those contracts are a few years old, but they are still outstanding commitments. And per the request of the mayor and several members of the governing body, we will be bringing as part of our one-time budget adjustment requests to you next council meeting on August 14th. Among many other bars, there will be a bar to transfer $3 million from the general fund into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There will also be an increase to contracts in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund because we had to temporarily reduce them when we got the budget approved, so as not to run afoul of unbalanced budget requirements. When that $3 million is moved in, that piece, so I think it's about $959,000, will be also moved into contracts and paid for from that general fund transfer on the same bar.
Back to you, Counselor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Andy, for the clarification. Just to make sure I heard you correctly, did you say $28 million?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor Garcia, no, $8 million. Just the 8. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
And is there a reason why we have not followed up with these entities in regards to getting the resources out to them? If these are contracts we've entered into, what's the delay? Is it the work has not been done? I guess because that's a lot of money to be kind of sitting there if we can put it to use in other avenues. So just curious about that.
Certainly, Mayor and councilors. So for the fund each year going through the cycle, we only allocate as much as we have. We do not just entertain all the great options. That is one of the challenges each year, is that there are always more funds requested, more projects than we actually can fund. However, with the types of projects that come before us, this one's interestingly enough could be one of those, hopefully not, but could be one of these because construction can take a lot of time. There's just a lot of factors of why it can't be spent right away compared to other services. So that is why we can have these moments where it'll seem like more, but as Andy had mentioned, there are some projects that they are committed. These are not just 8 million sitting there, but each one is committed to a project. So this project today is from this cycle.
Understand that. If and I don't need this right now, but if I could get a breakdown of all the past awards made and the outstanding balances for that haven't been allocated to the applicant, and that way we can begin to check in with entities, because you raise a great point, especially when we enter into a contract with a developer who wants to build housing, and housing costs are skyrocket, and the $600,000 doesn't go as far as it used to, so they might not utilize it. So and if I can get a breakdown just of from that 8 million, what has still not left the door, and if we can begin to check in on what the progress is, that would be helpful. With that, no other questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Mayorworth and then Counselor Cassett.
Thank you, Mayor. We do regularly check in with these people. They're in communication with us, with the staff of the Affordable Housing Office about the issues they're having and why money isn't being pulled down. This isn't money just sitting there and nobody's kind of paying attention, correct? There's regular communication between the office and the grantees.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, counselors. Correct. That is absolutely correct. And that actually gets to one question I don't think I was able to fully answer previously, but I know came up last month, is that we have quarterly reports from all the contracts. We have annual reports as well. So we would have a sense both for who the money is being spent for, what are the outcomes, and those types of outstanding figures. Could it be drawn up in a different way so it's maybe more visual or easier to see? Absolutely. But this is not just random money left out in the wind.
Right, that we're not tracking. And I think, and you remind me with that answer that when, before Ms. Ladd left, she also referenced the number of reports that are required and that, you know, those are available to us, if we're interested. So these are things that are tracked and easy to, provide, I guess, is the thing. This isn't staff work that would have to happen because obviously it's really important that we track our grant awards and make sure people are spending them and understand why it is they haven't spent something and what the timeline is for getting something done. And I believe even the Community Development Commission looks at this. When we talk about the awards for the current year, we're looking back to see, you know, when we're in the conversation about making awards for the current year, we're also looking at what we've granted out before. Just again, because I think we don't want to be tying up a whole bunch of money to one grantee who is demonstrating that maybe they don't have the capacity to get the money out the door, right? So we want to, I mean, there's some oversight, there's some accountability. This is happening, correct?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, counselors. I can't take credit for that last item that you mentioned, but my former colleague, Cody Minnick, did a great job working on these spreadsheets and providing all of this context. In my experience, that was particularly helpful to see, both for myself as someone who was new to that process and also for newer counselors to see. Absolutely. There's a lot of context and nuance that goes into these applications.
Yeah, and I just also want, in case the public isn't aware, the Community Development Commission is made up of members of the community, and they also kind of keep an eye on this stuff, and they're, you know, very interested in making sure that the money that we're awarding is actually helping us do the kinds of meet the goals that we're trying to achieve with having this money. So I just would point out that this isn't just a staff thing, but there is a Community Development Commission, and they are very interested in making sure the dollars are spent and we're achieving the goals that we need to for the affordable needs that we have in this community. So just want to make that point. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor Cassett.
So much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for being here, Ms. Frank. We appreciate you. I know this is your first time stepping up, so appreciate it very much. I just wanted to follow up. You know, we had a comment around, you know, that the term affordable housing is thrown around quite a bit, which it is. However, there is a specific definition when it comes to the Santa Fe Homes program. And I always like to take the opportunity to point that out to the public and anybody listening, because I know it is not widely understood. And I think we can have, you know, a lot of debate as to whether or not it's actually meeting the needs of the community, but that's a very different conversation that is set by state law. But if you could talk about what do we mean when we say affordable housing per the Santa Fe Homes program?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Cassett. So for the Santa Fe Homes program, I've used a couple points of jargon tonight, mentioning the pricing schedule, mentioning things like AMI. AMI, for those who are not aware, that stands for the area median income. That is specific to the area. This is a table that is brought forward by HUD, not always at the same time every year, but there is an annual one for each year, and it goes for it ranges for the household size. So if you are a smaller household, you will have a smaller AMI than a larger household, and this goes up by percentage. So it goes as low as I believe 30. It can go up much further. The idea is that we can see what the schedule looks like of what affordability should look like for these groups. Of course, there's going to be some nuance. The goal always, the research standard is that people should not be spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So that is where that is rooted in. That's why these figures are helpful. So specifically thinking like for this project, the idea being that these 8 affordable homes will be going to people who will be earning at or under 120% of the area median income. That depends on the size home. This depends on the household. We don't want to cap it at one income type to say you are making 80,000 less, 60,000 less. It's supposed to be flexible in that way. That's where it ties back to the reports, where it's really helpful to see who is actually entering these homes. What are they making? What does this look like? And that's why we get to this jargon again of, because we're building different types of homes, we don't want to set one price to say if it's affordable, you're only selling it for this amount.
Yeah, that does help quite a bit. And I know that it gets really complex. I've had this conversation a number of times with constituents where they say, well, what's an affordable house? And I give the definition. They're like, you're avoiding the answer. I'm like, no. I know it's really complex. If you could speak a little bit more to that flexibility piece, because I do think that is key, because people do want an answer of what do you consider, and they're wanting to hear something like $250,000 for a 4-bedroom home, which we can't quite give. But why is that flexibility important in terms of our primary goal, which is getting people into homes that they can afford and stay there?
Certainly. So this is one of my favorite things to do, is to refer to our strategic housing plan, is that we can see that there are gaps across the continuum. We are not just housing people who are making under 30,000 a year. We're not just creating housing for people who are making under 50,000. The idea being is that we have a ton of different households with a ton of needs, and there should be flexibility in terms of what can be offered. So just the given reality, it takes a long time to find a house, especially if you are lower income. The reality is there are fewer market options on the market. We don't want to restrict it so that there's only one for one type. That makes it harder. Also, if you're the seller, think if you are an affordable home and it's going through a resale process, we have a lot of rules about that in the administrative procedures. So that is part of the nuance there of why we have these ranges of what works. And that gets into, again, a lot of the nuance in the code of making sure we're not just building for the upper tier, not just for people making between 100 and 120, which, as we know, that's still not the upper tier in Santa Fe. That's why I mentioned the strategic housing plan. There is still a large gap between 120% AMI and 150.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yes, glad you clarified that when you say making between 100 and 120, we don't mean 100 and $120,000. We mean 100 and 120% AMI.
Correct. And also depending on the household size. Again, it gets to that whole, it depends. If it's 4 people, is it 3? I mean, I've had that conversation with someone clarifying, because it was one single adult with 2 kids. That changes the household size. It changes the whole equation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate you taking some time to discuss the complexity. Housing is a much more complex issue than I think it often appears on the surface. So I do really appreciate your expertise. Very glad that you're here to assist us with this. No further questions.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Councilor Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to read this language that's in the contract that I was referring to earlier. It's on page 6 of the packet, page 3 of the contract, and it's item 6, appropriations. The terms of this contract are contingent upon sufficient appropriations and authorization being made by the governing body for the performance of this contract. If sufficient appropriations and authorizations are not made by the governing body, this contract shall terminate immediately upon written notice being given by the city to the contractor. The city's decision as to whether sufficient appropriations are available shall be accepted by the contractor and shall be final. If the city proposes an amendment to the contract to unilaterally reduce funding, the contractor shall have the option to terminate the contract and to agree to the reduced funding within 30 days of receipt of the proposed amendment. So again, I think this is really important language that's in there and helps us with the fact that these awards are made prior to the budget being adopted, and this year prior to the money coming from the one-time proposal. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments or questions about this item? Counselor Garcia, Michael, did you, again, I'm just checking to make sure I don't miss you.
Thank you for checking, Mr. Mayor. No other questions.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. Can somebody please let Counselor Castro know that we have finished this item and she should return, please? And Madam Clerk, can you take us to the next item on the agenda, please?
Certainly, Mayor. The next item is matters from the city manager.
And our deputy city manager is having opened the door, coming back to her chair. Are there any matters, Madam Deputy City Manager?
No, thank you, Mayor.
And the next item, Madam Clerk?
Next item is matters from the city attorney.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, or do I have the floor?
You do have the
Okay,
floor.
thanks. Counselors, I do recommend we go into executive session for a quarterly update on threatened litigation, particularly the Hill et al. V City of Santa Fe case. I also I'm going to be sending out introductions to our 3 new staff members. We will be fully staffed as of Monday.
Beautiful. With that, Councilor Mayorworth, do you have a motion to make?
I do. I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1H, Subpart 7, for discussion of threatened or pending litigation in which the governing body is or may become a participant.
There a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Sí.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. We're gonna take a break now, go into executive session. We're gonna do our very, very best to get back no later than 7 so that we can perhaps amend our agenda to go directly to petitions from the floor that we try to take up at 7. But until then, we will be recessed. Okay, I think we are ready to resume. Assuming, Madam Clerk, you're with us just in there you go, in your, remote self.
Yes, Mayor,
Very
I'm
good.
here.
Thank you. In that case, I would ask, Counselor Merriworth to make a motion, please, if she can find it.
Yes, I have it saved on favorites, just for such an occasion.
Good.
Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15 looks like 1J, I move that the governing body reconvene an open session and state for the record that the matters discussed in the closed session were limited to those specified in the motion for closure.
There is a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the motion then?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Sí.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. And so, Madam Clerk, what's the next item on the agenda?
Next item is matters from the city clerk. I have nothing to report today. We'll move on to communications from the governing body.
Very well. I will start with Counselor Michael Garcia, so I don't overlook him because he's zooming into the meeting. Counselor Garcia, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two quick items. Reminder to all school-age parents, and this weekend is tax holiday weekend. That's August 2nd through August 4th. And so as the parents know, going back to school can be quite costly. So take advantage of the tax holiday weekend, and just wishing all the returning students and parents a successful school year. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor Castro.
I'd like to wish my sister a very happy birthday today and remind everyone that tomorrow morning at 8:30 at Harry's Roadhouse, the HRA will be having their coffee and collab.
Beautiful. Counselor Chavez.
Mayor, I just want to wish everybody also a happy beginning of school year. I think staff starts on Tuesday. Most students start on Friday. So everyone be patient with traffic, be safe, watch for kids, and have a good year.
Thank you. Counselor Lindell.
I have nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Faulkner.
I have nothing.
Counselor Merriworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing.
Wow. Counselor Cassidy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to start something, giving some reports from the Quality of Life Committee. I know that not everybody is always attuned to what is happening there, and we do have some pretty good presentations. I don't know if it was relayed on my behalf as I was out sick at our last regular governing body meeting, but on July 3rd, we did have a presentation from the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness, providing us an update on the progress with Built for Zero and the work that they are doing. It is one slice of, I would say, of the work that we are doing addressing homelessness, but it is a pretty big slice. So I would highly recommend that anybody interested in that topic take the opportunity to go back and watch that. It is available on YouTube. Then on August 7th, which I actually unfortunately will not be at that one. Thank you, Councilor Chavez, for stepping in his chair for me. We will be having a discussion on the land use permitting process. So we'll have the team from land use coming in and talking to us about what's going on with permitting, what are some of the solutions that they are really looking at to improve this. We've heard a lot from the community that this can be a challenge. So both understanding what is going on right now, as well as what is the work that they are doing. So again, if that is a topic that you are interested in, I definitely encourage you to watch Quality of Life. You can either do so on the City of Santa Fe's YouTube channel at your convenience, or it is streamed live 5 o'clock typically the first and third Wednesdays of the month. Other than that, I also want to wish everybody a happy back to school. My family will be entering into the elementary schools this year, so that's fun, I think. But I'm very excited for everybody who's going back. I know that it can be a long summer for parents and also for kids. So thank you, teachers, for jumping right in. I know the beginning can be a little rocky, and thank you so much, Counselor Chavez, for your work in that arena.
Thank you. Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. I just wanted to give a shout out to a group on the south side of town, Tierra Real community, and Counselor Faulkner and I have been working with them. They've organized and really want to clean up their community. There's a lot of issues going on there at this point. I want to shout out to the administration and some of the directors that have vouched to help with their endeavors, but you know, that shows that when people get together and they want to change things in their communities that they work, and we're here to help them. So just shout out to those people and those ones that have reached out to us. I wanted to I know that we had an item on consent that referred to the Midtown campus and the redevelopment of the Midtown campus, and I think that it would be really great to have some sort of a presentation in the near future as to where we're at with that. I think that actually having a couple of new counselors who I don't believe were involved with approving the development plans and so on and so forth, so we can get up to speed as to where we're at and what we're doing and the direction that we're taking. And just my request. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to give my hearty congratulations to everybody who participated in the Spanish market this year. Terrific weekend of celebration, great art, great culture, great music, great fun, tremendous turnout. The booths were great. The kids were outstanding in the youth part of the program. And it's just really exciting to see that market really giving the city a tremendous amount of heart and a tremendous amount of tradition. And congratulations to everybody who participated, and thank you to everybody who made it down to the market and found something to take home as a treasure to add to their household. It was beautiful to see. Madam Clerk, take us to the next item, please. Well, before we do that, we are tiptoeing past 7 o'clock. We only have a couple things to introduce, and then we'll be at petitions from the floor. So let's just press forward and we'll get there quickly.
Next item, Mayor, is introductions of legislation. 16A is consideration of a resolution sponsored by Mayor Alan Weber, Councilor Carol Romero Worth, and Councilor Michael Garcia. It's a resolution proposing a ballot question to be submitted to the City of Santa Fe voters during the November 5th, 2024 general election relating to the city issuance of a general obligation bond in the maximum principal amount of $25 million to be repaid from property taxes to construct, design, equip, and improve roads and streets within the city.
I'll just take a few minutes to introduce this, and then my co-sponsors, turn the mic over to them as well. I'm very pleased we can make this, bring this resolution forward to the governing body. I think everybody on the governing body knows that a high priority in our community is getting our streets and roads improved. These particular streets, and there are more than 50 projects on the proposed list. These are projects that by doing them now, we will avoid a much higher price tag later. They are unfortunately streets that are deteriorating, and so this is very smart preventative maintenance on the part of the city. It checks also some of the boxes we were talking about with the sustainability program that was in front of us earlier this evening. It really demonstrates good fiscal management. It is a use of our bonding capacity for the benefit of the entire community. It is across the board in every part of the city, a recognition that there's a need to improve our roads and streets. These are projects that have long been asked for, either by members of the governing body or by residents of the city, or identified by our public works team as high priority. The price tag for our residents, if they were to approve it, and it should be noted, this resolution is a decision to put a matter on the ballot, and so it will be up to our voters to decide whether they'd like to approve it or not. But the $25 million in more than 50 projects would be at a cost to someone who owns a home that's assessed at $500,000. They would see a $25 increase in their property tax. So I'm glad we can bring this forward. I think it's a good use of our bonding capacity. I think it's also something the voters who've appeared in front of the governing body have asked for, and we're trying to respond in a responsible and sound way. Councilor Merworth or Councilor Garcia, do you want to weigh in on this as a co-sponsor, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the caption speaks for itself.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Merworth, you're also on this resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just point out too that the idea would be also that there's a 10% set aside for each district to invest in residential roads. A lot of times we see that the priorities are those that are on emergency routes or are heavily traveled. And we do have a lot of deferred maintenance in each district on residential roads. So I'm excited that we have a little bit of money that we'll be able to direct towards those roads, because they often don't rise to the top of the list. And I think that, we do hear a lot about the condition of our roads. I think we have a lot of deferred maintenance in roads, and I think this is a significant step towards beginning to chip away at that. So thank you, Mayor.
The record will show that Councilor Merworth said we were going to make inroads in roads. What's the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk?
The next item is 16B, consideration of Bill 2024-24 and adoption of an ordinance. It's sponsored by Councilor Carol Romero Worth. It's a resolution, or I'm sorry, it's a bill relating to House Bill 139, adopted during the 2023 regular session, amending section 1-3.2 SFCC 1987 to remove text about the corrections fee, judicial education fee, court automation fee, and substance abuse fee, consistent with the repeal of sections 31-12-8 and 34-14-11 NMSA 1978, and amending section 12-6-12.2 of the Uniform Traffic Ordinance to remove text about the DWI prevention fee and the crime laboratory fee, consistent with the repeal of section 31-12-7 NMSA 1978.
Thank you. And I believe Councilor Merworth, you are the sponsor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think the caption does speak for itself. And I would just note that what we're doing is bringing our fees in line with what the changes that have occurred at the state level. That's all I have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Next item, Mayor, is petitions from the floor.
Very good. So this time we'll accord 2 minutes of speaking before the governing body to anyone who wants to bring a matter to our attention. I would say if you're here for the public hearing that's later on in the evening, not that much later on, but a couple items further on, hold off until that public hearing arrives. If you have something other than that public hearing you'd like to speak to, now is the time to come forward to the podium, give us your name, and Madam Clerk, you'll be keeping the clock for us, I believe.
Yes, Mayor.
Very good. You have the floor. But the mic is not on.
Thank you, Mayor. Nicoletta Monroe, District 1 citizen. I'm here to speak about some recent reports. I read the fiscal year 23 audit. Thank you for people who sent the link to that. It's not on the website. I also read the enterprise risk assessment report from Moss Adams, which I find to be very important. I'm not sure if the governing body has had a chance to hear a presentation on that. I understand that that is being requested, and that report found some very serious issues. For example, there isn't enough grants tracking, page 35. There may be Open Meetings Act violations, page 36. The harassment prevention policy is not up to date, page 37. Your fraud, waste, and abuse trainings are inadequate. You don't have a code of ethics or a fraud prevention policy written for 15 years. Your policy is 15 years old, page 41, et cetera. So that's one report I read. I found other reports. I read the SFPS school reports. I don't know if people have read this. It was in our newspaper. And it's information from 22-23 about our schools, significant findings about testing. Mainly my concern is that the children are not attending school up to 15% of the time, Capitol High, not attending 30% of the time, Santa Fe High. It may seem that this is not our problem. However, truancy is your problem, Mayor, if this is happening in your city. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you have the floor.
Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Rod Gould. I'm president of Los Cerros, Colorado's Homeowners Association. I wish to thank and congratulate you on your consideration of placing this ballot measure before the voters in November to decide whether or not the voters of Santa Fe wish to invest in the streets and roads of our fair city. Our city, as we all know, is an exceptional city in many ways, but our streets and roads do not measure up. Many of them are unsafe, and over a third are categorized as in poor condition. The only way to catch up is to make a major investment in our streets and roads. And that means that we as property owners must step up and assist. What you're talking about here is an exercise in pure democracy, direct democracy. We will have a decide for ourselves whether or not to make that investment. I would suggest to those that abhor the idea of additional taxes that it's a matter of paying me now or paying later, because we are paying more for realigning our cars, replacing our tires, repairing our suspensions because of poor condition roads, as opposed to roads that are in a maintainable level. If you make this investment over 3 years, the majority of Santa Fe streets and roads will be at a level where they can be maintained. And I would suggest to you humbly that if you make that decision and the voters approve this bond measure, that I would suggest the council consider investing in preventive maintenance, the staffing, the materials and equipment to allow the Public Works Department to do slurry sealing, crack sealing, and the rest in order to extend the lives of the streets, rather than wait for them to simply wear out and have to be repaved or rebuilt. Pavement management systems have been around for decades. They work everywhere in America. It's time that Santa Fe steps up for this current technology. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for being here.
Muy buenas tardes, alcalde y concejales y a todos los que nos escuchan hoy. Mi nombre es Carla Colindres y antes que nada quiero iniciar por darle las gracias por darnos un espacio para dar nuestra opinión y tomarnos en cuenta y no discriminarnos. Pienso que está muy difícil la situación con la renta, tanto como para pagar o encontrar una vivienda bonita o apta para nuestra familia, ya que los arrendatarios nos discriminan tanto por el sueldo base o ingreso al hogar. Te piden que ganes el triple de lo que cuesta una renta y es demasiado difícil calificar para un apartamento o casa hoy en día. También Hay arrendatarios que no te permiten pagar con ayudas que surgen en el condado para la renta. La verdad, es demasiado frustrante sentirse en el limbo de no saber si mañana tendrás un techo para tu familia. Por eso estoy hoy aquí y les pido que escuchen nuestras voces y que se pongan la mano en el corazón y nos puedan ayudar a solucionar este problema. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Santa Fe City Council and Mayor Weber, I'm really happy to inform you that
We need your name for the record, sir.
my name is Stephen Fox. I'm founder of United Nations Santa Fe. And I'm really happy to inform you that with some intensive research, we have discovered that Lyndon Baines Johnson, some of you are old enough to remember him, told his wife, Claudia Alma Taylor, on November 21st, the next time we get into bed together, I'm going to be president. So this proves a malice of forethought. This proves that he knew it in advance. And if you couple that fact with with what goes on in this book by Family Secrets by Russ Baker about George Herbert Walker Bush was asked, what were you doing on November 22nd? He said he couldn't remember. You should not only look those things up. I told the USA Today, the publisher of the New York Times, the Santa Fe New Mexican, a whole bunch of people, some journalists, lots and lots and lots of numerous UN ambassadors and heads of state. This is a big breakthrough. And I told Bobby Kennedy about it. And it helped him, it encouraged him because he realized that Richard Nixon probably had nothing to do with that assassination. And that's why Bobby Kennedy went over to the Nixon Library, and I could go on for a lot of time. This is most important. And you only give me 2 minutes. So that's, but Aaron has some of the papers there, so you can get those. But Bobby Kennedy went over to the Nixon Library and gave a totally brilliant foreign policy statement, which you should read. It's on YouTube. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you again in person and in correspondence.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jared O'Shell. So the city wants to ask the people to pay for roads that have been neglected to the point of costing considerably more than regular maintenance would have. Under the department's mismanagement and ultimately under the this body and the mayor's watch, regular maintenance has lapsed. Where has the taxes and fees that normally cover maintenance gone, and why should the people pay more now? The department has few employees, and it is reported not to be easy to work there. Why don't these people who have failed to do their jobs pay for the roads, and the people who have been asking for them to do their jobs not? Members of this council and the mayor had the nerve to lecture the people of Area 1B about joining the city and the needs of the people in the city, but the new development in Area 1B wouldn't help the average person in the city. Its target is for new landlord hires. Mike Lofton said it himself. Lip service about affordable housing is met with this council voting for in lieu of fees elsewhere. This failing city cannot take care of its previously annexed areas in violation of the agreement to annex, and it can't take care of its citizens proper. As anyone with eyes can see, skyrocketing crime and horrid roads, plus we have to pay extra to fix it. Not to mention water problems, and the list goes on. It mishandled funds that were set for a new fire station in our area and other funds. It has been late on audits and the surplus that could cover the roads, but they wish to burden the people with it. We do not wish to be included in the list of problems the city has and is failing to address in a timely manner. It has been 16 years since the first talks of annexing us. If the city has credibility, that would be one story. But with late audits and visual deterioration of the city, there is no other story. The only motivation the city has to annex this area is one abusive company that does not build for the people who live here, but build for people who will blindly move here into the problems. The city has other funds to pay for affordable housing. The city and other funds pay for affordable housing. HomeWise does nothing for affordability. The fact that the city bends over backwards for one company is very odd indeed. The city signed an agreement not to change the zoning of Area 1, and the same agreement they wish to use to annex us.
Thank you, sir.
Lofton has shown us his plans that include a very heavy change to
Thank you.
zoning. You cannot ignore one
Thank-
part of the agreement
Okay.
while marching on to cite another.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back.
Thank you. Well, appreciate your coming. Is there anyone else in the room who wants to use this time for a 2-minute opportunity to speak to something not a public hearing tonight? And if not, Madam Clerk, is there someone in the Zoom room who would like to?
Yes, Mayor. We'll start with Stephanie Benenato.
Very good.
Thank you. Good evening, Council, and Mayor. I was happy to hear about, or not happy, but I think it was timely that it was pointed out about the Ethics Board and their underperformance. I think that they ignore the purpose section, even though, as I pointed out in my public comments, there's case law that says you have to look at the whole law and make sense of it. Even more startling is this idea that one person forgot that they weren't supposed to make donations, and that this has prevented one case from getting resolved. And nobody, including staff attorney or any of these long-standing members who are mostly attorneys, seem to understand the role of the chair who could vote in that case. The other thing that I was shocked to find out, and again, I'm happy somebody just brought it up about affordable housing. We had an ENN meeting, which again, the link, by the way, was problematic for several people. And I was shocked actually to find out that if you pay a fee in lieu of, you get extra units on the property. And I really can't understand that. I mean, $8,000 maximum and you get more units. I thought that should be an incentive for people who are actually providing units on the property. And then the other thing, which I've also brought up to you in, I believe, the public comment, is the care of the weight room machines at Perez. They are absolutely sticky. They are loaded now with chemicals because people are spraying them like crazy. And really, there's no scientific theory that says you're going to get a communicable disease from the outside of somebody else's clothing. And I mean, you're sticking to the seat, your skin is sticking to it, your hair, if you have to lean back, sticks to it. You have your employees exposed to these chemicals all day. You have other people taking them home with them. I don't really see the point. I see it,
Thank you.
wearing masks might be okay, but not all of this a chemical. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in the Zoom room, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. We'll go next to Randy Mary.
Is the individual unmuted?
They are currently muted. Randy Mary, if you can unmute, you're able to speak right now.
Thank you. Members of the governing body, I'm Mary Moore from Area 1B, and I realize tonight how incredibly complex and challenging your jobs are. I'm here because I regularly hear from city representatives that Area 1B wants city services. And that's a problem because we know the city has trouble maintaining the infrastructure it has now, and it hasn't been able to provide services to areas previously annexed. Most of my neighbors and I do not want or need city services. Our water is tested and certified clean. My septic tank is well maintained. It doesn't leak. Can you guarantee the same high quality and low costs as I have now? Annexation is not free. Studies show that newly annexed areas often invest less in city services than predicted, and they generate less income than expected. And that creates a higher burden for all taxpayers. I understand that the county offered the opportunity for areas slated for development to join the city and for the current residents to stay in the county. I understood you did not want to compromise, and I do not understand why it's necessary to force our area into unwanted annexation against our will. Council members, I hope you will question what will be your legacy. Will you address the needs of your current voters and taxpayers, or further stress them by annexing areas that ask not to be annexed? I urge you at this time to focus on your existing problems rather than to increase the ever-growing panoply of problems. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, back to you.
We'll go next to William Mee.
This is William Mee from Agua Fria Village. And in 2000, Councilor Chavez proposed annexation. His proposal was voted down twice, but for residents of Area 1B, it started a 24-year nightmare of uncertainty. I wrote an op-ed in the New Mexican on November 21st, 2021, and I outlined all of the problems that the annexation was causing. Since I wrote that op-ed, a number of people have contacted me from annexed areas, and they're still not getting full services. So why would we ever believe that Area 1B would also get full services? We can go to the 2012 study by the University of New Mexico Bureau of Business and Economic Research, and we could see where the BBER said the city would need about $110 million, back in 2012 to really annex those areas. And the city has not made that investment. We're talking about roads tonight. The city has been unable to make that investment. And, we're seeing that any annexed areas are not being prioritized, as well as the earlier city limit areas. And so it's just a total nightmare for these people. And I think the city should do a resolution saying that it's, disbanding that Area 1B annexation attempt. And we can all get along and get on with our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Mayor, there are no other hands raised in the Zoom room.
Very good. Are there others here in this chamber who would like the opportunity to speak to something other than the public hearing tonight? Now would be your chance. If there are no other individuals for petitions from the floor, Madam Clerk, can we go to the next item, please?
Yes, Mayor, the next item is 18, public comment on bills. This is the first public comment, no action. It's consideration of bill number 2024-9 and adoption of an ordinance. This is sponsored by Councilor Carol Romero Worth. It's a bill amending SFCC 1987, section 11-8, to allow the city of Santa Fe to obtain an investment advisory service contractually for the investment of public funds.
Very good. This is an opportunity for public comment. There won't be a vote tonight. It's just the chance for anyone who wishes to address this measure to raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or come to the podium if you'd like to speak to it now as it begins its its journey through our legislative process. Any hands in the Zoom room, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. Stephanie Benenato.
Very good.
Thank you, Stephanie Benenato. I just wonder why the sponsor thinks that it is necessary to hire this investment consultant, and why this is outside the scope of what would be done, I don't know, within finance or some other division of the city. And I wonder how much finance will have in looking at what this investment council's happening and what control the city council would have over that. And I hope there will be some discussion of that along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to take advantage of the opportunity for public comment on this proposed bill? Anyone else in the Zoom room, Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor, no other hands are raised in the Zoom room.
Very good. And no one in the chambers has come forward. So, Madam Clerk, can we go to the next item then, please?
Yes, Mayor, the next item is 19, final action on legislation. This is a public hearing. It's consideration of bill number 2024-3 and adoption of an ordinance. This is sponsored by Councilor Jamie Cassett and Councilor Alma Castro. It's a bill relating to housing discrimination, defining source of income, and prohibiting discrimination based on source of income effective August 1st, 2025, including sex, in addition to gender as a protected class, defining owner, and making technical corrections.
And this is a public hearing. So in a minute, we'll go to open the podium and have people in the Zoom room. But before we do that, I'd entertain the sponsors to take the floor. And because it has been in front of us before and you all brought it back for some additional work.
It has been amended. It was actually amended in finance. So I will defer to the finance committee to talk about that process. But I will be moving to approve this as amended after that.
Councilor Cassick?
Thank you so much. So we did finally have the opportunity to review some of the amendments and adopt them in finance. The big changes was we put an effective date of August 1st, 2025. Because this section of the code does deal with discrimination in a variety of different ways, we were very clear that this only has to do with this component of source of income. The reason for the delay really has to do with the fact that we heard loud and clear from our Office of Affordable Housing that at this time they had no method of implementation. I definitely have the philosophy that if we cannot implement a law, that we should not be passing it. So this does give opportunity as well as direction for that implementation process to be put into place. So in addition, we wanted to have some opportunity to work with the various community partners to provide some education around vouchers, around what does this actually mean for landlords? How would this actually impact individuals? We already have some community partners that have stepped up and said that they are interested in taking on some of that educational role. So I greatly appreciate their dedication to our community and to this issue. The other piece, I'm sorry, it has been a while since it hit finance. I'm going to scroll through and look for the blue. The other big piece is that we specified if we are dealing with vouchers, because remember, this is source of income. So there's a variety of sources of income. Vouchers is only one component of this. You know, people might be getting money from Social Security or some other income source. But when it specifically comes to housing assistance payments or vouchers, as we frequently refer to them, we are specifically looking at government-backed vouchers. This way, we do know that there's consistency in those vouchers being provided, as opposed to some other organizations that do not always are not always able to continue to provide that funding. And we do not want to put landlords or tenants in a position where they believe that they have money for a lease and then that is not there. So this really is specifying vouchers that will be backed by HUD, by our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, state, federal, local governments, which to our understanding is the vast majority of vouchers that are being utilized anyhow. The other change that has been made is we're taking a look at some other communities, looking at Albuquerque, and specifying that if an individual or a landlord that is looking to rent and is trying to get approval from HUD or has been asked to get approval from HUD or another organization to have that voucher accepted, because the organization providing or the government agency providing the voucher at times does need to actually approve of the housing unit. If there is a delay that is an unreasonable delay in them getting their inspection to have that certification, they can move on to another tenant. We do not want this to be a scenario where landlords are being penalized because of delays with government inspections, because we do understand there's a fine balance there. Last but not least, I believe that was the end of the changes that we made. Overall, what this bill does is it refers to source of income discrimination and stating that an individual cannot be rejected from renting based on the source of income. So where that money for rent is coming from. And that will no longer be permitted here in the city. Councilor Castro, anything to add to the litany?
Hang on, actually, I get to.
I apologize, Mayor.
Councilor Castro, anything to add?
Yes, so I just want to thank everyone who has been coming out to give us public comment over the last 2 months on this issue. We do know that there's a great need in the community. And also, if we get ourselves together and in collaboration with our partners, we can get this off the ground in terms of how we enforce before the year is up. There is a clause that says when we get the opportunity to talk to our department, I think that we're going to be able to really bolster how we work on this. So please reach out to us and help us build this enforcement mechanism. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, back to you, Councilor Castro.
We took that clause out. So it does just say it's effective August 1st, 2025.
2025, yes.
So that is
will
a set date.
Yeah, a set date, and we will be working with our partners between now and then to help implement that education program and enforcement program. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good. Before we go to the public testimony part, I think you wanted to make a motion, Councilor?
I would like to move to approve as amended.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second, but we also have folks I know who are here to testify and probably on the Zoom as well. Why don't we ask anyone who wants to come speak to this bill to come forward now, and the city clerk will keep time as we have been doing. Please try to limit your remarks to 2 minutes, and we'll give everybody a chance to be heard. If you want to come forward, now is the time to do it. If no one comes forward to this podium, we'll defer to folks in the Zoom room. You may have to lift the mic up a little.
No, I just lean over here.
All right.
My name is Alan Lesek, and I'm the Executive Director of the Apartment Association in New Mexico. I want to thank Councilor Castro and Councilor Cassett for meeting with us. And I want to let you know that we are in full support of these amendments. I think these were great changes. These were things that were discussed, and these are great additions to the bill. Respectfully, we still oppose the bill because we know it's much more complicated than that. And I actually want to talk a little bit even about the government-backed funding. What's going on right now in Albuquerque, as you know, we have this. The city of Albuquerque's budget for vouchers was just cut by $5 million. What that means is that hundreds of voucher holders are now facing eviction. They did not pay rent in July in July, and they will not make rent this month either, tomorrow. What that's done is that's really created a divide between the city, between the voucher holders, between the landlords. And it's unfortunately, nothing is ever guaranteed. And it's really challenging. And there's just unintended consequences that come to this. We saw when this passed, we saw rents being raised in Albuquerque. We saw minimum credit scores being raised in Albuquerque. And I can tell you that ultimately, this policy in Albuquerque has hurt more people than it has helped. I think we all know that the real solution here is more affordable housing. And, how we get there, I think we all have different ideas. I think we do need an all-in approach. Unfortunately, policies like this do not build housing. And that's the challenge. And so I really love the work that the city council has done on this. And like I say, I really want to thank you guys. So that's why it's a respectful oppose, because we 100% agree that there should not be discrimination. But this bill is far more complicated than that. And there are far more nuances, I think, that really haven't been touched on. And so I'll close with that, but thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, you have the floor.
Good evening, Dylan Schwagel, former case manager here in Santa Fe, representative for Alianza Tenant Union. In the past couple of weeks in my capacity as representative, I've spoken with a number of our members. I believe currently 5 or 6 of whom fall under the category of people who were wrongfully evicted or had their leases terminated, with the similarity between them being that they were on Section 8 or that they were trying to pay rent with rental assistance. I, in fact, count myself among one of them. Among these people, families, elderly women, their children and grandchildren, tossed out under false pretenses. And now they've lost their voucher because they are scattered here in Santa Fe and can't find a landlord that will accept it. Mothers who just had a child who relied on rental assistance to help pay for their rent during maternity leave, who were also evicted because they couldn't afford the rent. When I was working here in Santa Fe, I knew that this was happening at our apartment complex because I had seen it here in Santa Fe. I had already seen how at places like Vista Alegre and places like Casitas de Bella, where suddenly under new management, they are no longer accepting vouchers and rental assistance. They told us that as much. The number of times I had to speak with a landlord where I informed them that I worked for the Lifelink, that the person had rental assistance to pay for rent, I was asked questions like, well, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with them? Because we don't like to deal with people like that if they have issues. That highlights the other forms of discrimination that are intertwined with this. So I would like to say as well, on the matter of what will be the landlord response, especially some of these larger corporate landlords where this kind of discrimination happens, if their response to this is to threaten the city and threaten their tenants with further evictions and rent hikes as a consequence of just good policy, then I think we have a much larger problem and we should be very concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Nikhil Ananda. I'm a Santa Fe District 2 resident. And I just want to first recap, I guess, what's been going on for the last several months around this bill. Around when this ordinance was introduced, members of the apartment, the representatives of the apartment owners came here, and they came in claiming to be in good faith, saying that we love our voucher renters. We want to work with city council to make this easier to implement. And so for the last month, the city council has been amending this bill, delaying the implementation by over a year, all for the apartment lobby to just come out and say they oppose it anyways. That does not sound like good faith engagement to me. I think what's really at stake here is that this city spends millions of dollars a year supporting apartment owners, supporting developers, supporting the people who are tasked with providing housing in this. And yet we can't even provide the most basic protections to the actual tenants, to the actual residents and community members who live in these apartments. Just to respond to a few of the points raised, one of the previous speakers mentioned that rents have increased in Albuquerque since the implementation of their version. Well, news here, rents have increased everywhere else as well. They've increased in Santa Fe, and that's what's pushing people out year after year. I think we need a few protections for ordinary people, for people who can pay their rent, who have the money, who are being provided those funds and are just being discriminated against because of the source. Thank you.
Thank you. Your turn.
Hello, my name is John Bacon, and I'm a service provider for housing at the LifeLink. I support clients almost exclusively with vouchers. As a case manager, I currently have 28 housed clients and 4 that I'm trying to find housing for, that I've been looking for about 4 months for. Of the 28 that I have housed, 19 are housed in apartment complexes, large ones like Tres Santos, a number of them. This is not a complex issue. As far as private homeowners, 34% of my caseload, or 9 of them, are housed by private landlords. These are mom and pops, okay? I personally complete home visits for every one of my clients on a monthly basis. The state compensates me for that, not the city. Also, when a client identifies a unit, our housing department conducts a free inspection for the landlord and the client. We ensure that there's hot and cold running water, that there is heat, and electrical outlets are functioning. I strongly disagree that this is a complex issue requiring lots of education and cost to the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Pelican Lee. I was a resident of District 2 for the last 30 years. And after living with a Section 8 voucher with my landlord for 30 years, they decided to sell and I had to find a new place to live. This was last spring. I discovered what kind of housing discrimination was going on here in Santa Fe because many of the landlords that I called, what I learned was the first thing I had to ask is, will you take a Section 8 voucher? And probably 2/3 to 3/4 of them said no. And that was the end of the conversation. They did not find out that I had lived 30 years in my last place and that I was a good tenant that my landlord appreciated. I was lucky that through word of mouth, through friends of friends of friends, I found a place with a private landlord. And as a matter of fact, all of those ones that I was saying that I experienced discrimination from were private landlords. I tried to get into Tres Santos. They have an incredible lot of pressure of people trying to get in there because there's so few options for people with Section 8. So I found a landlord. She'd never dealt with Section 8. She said, what do I have to do? It's easy. It's really easy. The inspection is nothing. I mean, like John Bacon said, it's hot and cold running water. The toilet flushes, easy, easy. So, and then she had to prove that she was the owner and show a deed or a tax return. And that was about it. It's not a complicated thing. So I think that this ordinance will keep people off the streets who would be unhoused otherwise. And I think that's a really important part of this issue is it's about keeping people in housing rather than on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who is in the room and wishes to speak on this matter? Madam Clerk, anyone else in the Zoom room who has arrived since we started and would like to speak?
Yes, Mayor, Stephanie Benenato.
Good evening, Stephanie Benenato. I have taken Section 8 tenants and there can be some delays in getting inspected, but I didn't have a problem with the process. However, I am a little concerned about the enforcement, so I am happy that you are somehow delaying that part, really making sure that you have something that's going to work and it's not just another law on the books. I do wonder though, if somebody isn't like outright saying, no, I don't rent to Section 8, how it is that you prove discrimination. Because, for example, if I put my casita for rent, I will get 8 or 10 people easily within a day, and I almost always show it to everybody. So then it becomes who goes forward more quickly than somebody else. And so I don't know how, again, if that's your process, then how do you prove discrimination? And so that's just another question that I have. And again, I'm happy that you're trying to make enforcement something that really works as opposed to, just putting a law in the book. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the Zoom room, Madam Clerk?
Mayor, there are no other hands raised in the Zoom room.
Very good. So I think we'll take it up amongst ourselves on the governing body. It's a hearing. We have a motion and we have a second. Councillor Faulkner has suggested again that we keep time limits amongst ourselves so that we each get a chance to ask questions or raise our concerns or our support without and we'll pass the baton from person to person. And if we have to go around more than once, happy to do that as well. So whoever wants to start with hand up, I'd recognize anyone for questions or comments among the members of the governing body. Councillor Lee Garcia. You go first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I absolutely do applaud bringing this forward, because I think, it is it's something that how do we tackle this issue of people who need housing, can't attain it, do have support and basically can't find a dwelling unit because they're using a voucher. I would like to, maybe elaborate a little bit on a question from the last commenter, which says, how do we prove discrimination? And so, I think just about with everything that we do, when we create a rule or a law, how do we enforce it? And how do we actually make it work? Because we want to make it work and we want to see the results from our legislation, to be honest with you. I don't know. You can elaborate on that, please.
Councilor Castro, do you want to take that up?
Thank you. I agree. And I think that was the intent of the amendment. We heard loud and clear from our housing department that we needed a better established process. But as you know, I think that there could be better enforcement in a lot of areas. And so I think the way we enforce some of our ordinances is something that we're going to take a long, hard look at between now and August 1st of next year.
Councilor Cassett?
Thanks so much, Mr. Mayor. Honestly, I would refer to the city attorney, as this is a legal question in terms of how would you prove this? There are a wide variety of scenarios that I could envision that somebody might be experiencing that they would be coming forward with a case. So I think similar to most legal claims, there was going to be a process there. Somebody may be emailing, asking questions, or could be some other things. But given the legal nature of this, I would, defer to the city attorney regarding this.
Mayor, councilors, so we would have to do an investigation into a claim. So I would say it's somewhat of a factual question. It depends on the facts on the ground. And what the scenario is. So it really would depend on what evidence is available. And then we'd have to apply the law to those facts, whatever they are. I've heard in Albuquerque that some people actually posted that they would not rent to folks with vouchers. So that would be an example of evidence. If someone stated that, or if there were other proof that conclusion.
Back to you, Counselor.
Okay, so that being said, then what would be the process when it's identified there's probable cause that somebody is doing this and they may have a post or something of that matter? I mean, would it be who would they report it to?
Madam City Attorney, I think that's directed at you.
Mayor, councilors, in the ordinance, the way it is stated is that the complaint would be referred to the city attorney, and there would be staff assigned at the city to investigate. So that staff would be assigned by the city manager as stated in the ordinance. And depending on what their investigation found, then we would take next steps. The first step required is, so depending if it is a type of discrimination, so for source of income, that's a new type of discrimination that's being named. So if a type of discrimination is protected by HUD, then we would be making a referral to HUD so that they could be involved. If it was not, the city would seek to provide a conciliation between the parties. And if that didn't work, we could file in municipal court and potentially take other legal action.
Thank you. So that being said, when we when this goes, what's the date? August 1st, 2025. So will we have staff or personnel from the city put in place, and that might be from the city manager's office and budgeted for to try to enforce something like this?
Mayor, Councilor Garcia, was the first part of the question the date?
Well, the date is August 1st, 2025. So if that's when it's gonna go, if that's when it's gonna start being enforced, will we have staff members from the city able and willing and with appropriate not needs, with all the tools that they need to try to enforce this?
Mayor, Councilor Garcia, so it would be a staff member assigned by the city manager, whether they'd be in the city manager's office or somewhere else in the city is not specified in the ordinance, so it leaves some discretion.
Thank you. So at this point, we don't have anybody that would be able to overlook this or enforce it at this point.
Well, I think at this, without an ordinance, no assignments have been made, so it's contingent upon adoption of the measure.
Absolutely, thank you. You know, I've been back and forth on this because at the same time, I feel that I don't think anybody should be discriminated against. How do we prove that? I really feel anybody, I mean, it's money as anything else. And so one of the areas that have struggled with, and I did support this at the committee level, but one of the areas that I'm having trouble with is the fact that I'll use an analogy. And I have a business and I accept credit cards. And well, that credit card, there's 5 different cards. Well, one of them has a fee of 4%. Well, I may not want to accept that credit card because it goes towards my bottom line, and it's not discriminating towards anyone. It's just the fact that I have to look at it towards my bottom line. There may be another one that I will fully accept, and it's at a smaller rate, but I have the right and the ability to either accept or not accept that form of payment. And so that's just the area where I'm struggling with. I see that you know, what we're doing here almost seems to be the fact that we can't provide enough housing through Section 8, that we're pushing this on to any individual who owns a house. And that's the biggest part that I am struggling with in now going back to having a final vote on this. I do appreciate the amendments. And yet overall consequences of what this is going to do to just about anyone from one dwelling unit all the way up to large apartment complexes. It's very broad. And so those are the areas where I'm struggling with, and maybe through our conversation, it might change, but those are my concerns. And I think at this point, I will yield the floor and allow anybody else to ask questions.
Thank you, Counselor. I wonder, Counselor Castro, if you would like to speak to Counselor Garcia's last request for more clarification on the implications of this bill.
Perfect. Yes, I was about to do a point of clarification. I just want to make it clear that the actual housing isn't Section 8. The voucher that folks get would go towards their rent. And so currently that voucher can be used in any type of housing. What we're hearing from constituents is that they are trying to rent from all types of different individuals, not just small landlords, large landlords, but that you're right, there is not stock, there is not enough apartments, but also they're being told that they are not accepting Section 8 vouchers specifically, which, as you mentioned, is just like money, is just like cash. There is no fee associated with it. And as we've heard from the folks who are doing these inspections, that inspection is also free. And so there is no cost, just so that we're clear, associated with accepting a voucher.
If I
Counselor
could-
Garcia, did you want to pick up?
if I could just have a conversation over that. Understanding and knowing that the voucher is free and it's money, and yet there are going to be some strings attached to it if it is tied to government funds. And so I think you've addressed that in the amendments. Yet, however, what happens here again when the one case where somebody is trying to rent their home, they're forced to accept the voucher. That voucher is tied to rules. And then, let me finish. That voucher is tied to certain rules and regulations. And for some reason, they do have an inspection. And again, this might be small. They can fix it easily. But again, I just want to try to think of all of the issues that could arise from a situation that may happen. And, we're not looking at just a few houses. We're opening this up to every single dwelling unit that is a potential rental in the city of Santa Fe. And so what is tied to that voucher, which requires a person to have to adhere to a long list of requirements that would be government requirements.
Let's go to Counselor Cassett to answer that, and then we'll open the floor for someone else to ask questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Counselor, for that question. As we've stated over and over again in committee, this bill does not require a landlord to bring their unit up to HUD standards or to a voucher standard. So if the voucher rejects them, they have not rejected the voucher. So if they get an inspection and the inspection says, hey, this whatever problem with your window or whatever it may be does not allow you to take the voucher, nothing in this ordinance would require them to fix said window, or whatever the case may be. I would hope that they would, because when you look at the standards, they are pretty basic. They're pretty basic, health and safety issues. But that is up to them and how they would like to deal with the housing market. So in that scenario, there will not be a government requirement that is imposed on them in that sense, other than they have inspections. If they don't pass the inspection, they don't get to, they do not have the opportunity to rent to this individual who has a steady stream of money to come in every single month, which, to speak to nothing being guaranteed, people lose their jobs. So somebody might have a paycheck and they get laid off or fired, and guess what? Then they can't pay rent. And we are still in a scenario where somebody no longer has that money. So, those government vouchers can actually be more steady than other scenarios that individuals, especially within this income range, might be experiencing. But to your specific example, they are not required to make any physical changes to their home in order to bring it up to the standards that are required of a landlord that would be accepting the voucher. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Thank you so much for the explanation. I'll yield the floor.
Come
for
back
now.
around,
And,
Counselor, for sure.
More questions. Thank you.
Other council members who'd like to address the issue? In which case we can come back around a lot faster to you, Counselor, than I said before. Counselor Michael Garcia, again, I apologize. I can't see you on the screen. If your hand is up, please just speak up. The floor is open for you if you'd like to have 10 minutes to address this legislation. If not, just say so.
Thank you for checking in, Mayor. My hand is not raised.
Okay, didn't want to think we were ignoring you. Counselor Castro.
I would like to call the question.
I think the
Everybody who has wanted to speak.
question is, has everyone who wants to speak spoken? But that's fine. If the answer is everybody who has had their opportunity to speak has spoken, you're completely in order. Any other? Counselor Casson?
Thank you so much. I mostly have comments at this point, obviously.
We have a motion.
Point of order, you have a motion, you need a second, and it's non-debatable.
That's right.
So you can't go
Second.
anywhere else.
Okay, we do have a second to call the question, and it's non-debatable. Well, Madam City Attorney?
Okay,
Mayor Weber, councilors, has everyone had the opportunity to speak once?
I think you've had a chance to address it early on, Counselor Cass.
Have I had the chance to speak or have I just had the chance to answer questions?
I think that's a fair point, is that the sponsors haven't had a chance to just address
Okay.
on their own.
Point of order, they spoke right at the beginning of the
Yeah,
introduction.
you did. You introduced the bill for us by making the point as to how it had been changed through amendment.
Mayor Weber, councilors, if there wasn't a motion on the floor, I don't know that that counts. There's no motion on the floor at that point.
There is a motion.
There is now.
Right, but when the sponsors originally addressed the bill, there was not a motion on the floor.
That's also true.
So it's about
I'm
whether the opportunity to speak on the motion has
I'm going to retract my motion.
Okay, we're back in open hearing, and I believe Counselor Cassidy, you wanted a chance to speak before we go to the vote.
I did want a chance to speak and now, goodness, and of course now I forgot my comments after all of that. Give me one moment to regroup myself. I know what I wanted to state. So oftentimes when we start to have these policy debates around anything with housing, we start to have these conversations of, well, this isn't going to solve this problem. You need to do X. I never think that a single housing policy is going to be the solution of our extremely complex housing issue. We have a wide variety of scenarios for why people are having a hard time finding housing, staying housed, staying in the city of Santa Fe. This is just another piece of this puzzle. Yes, it is true that we do not have enough housing stock. Yes, it is true that we do not have enough housing stock in the rental range that most of these individuals would be able to access. But as one of our, speakers stated, she's very well aware of what she can afford. So she's not calling places that are out of her range. And then, saying, can you come down to my voucher? They're trying to rent within the range that would have been reasonable. And I know in some of my conversations with individuals that has been a piece of this. So I just wanted to really bring that back because I know that we keep having this conversation. Well, the problem is we don't have enough housing stock. Correct. We don't have enough housing stock. I've said this multiple times. We do not have a healthy housing market. Therefore, a lot of the things that we do not solve the problem, but because we have a market that is that we just do not have enough units available. But this is another piece of that puzzle. This is another component that we can add to this issue where we are going to need a very multifaceted approach. And we frequently are taking multifaceted approaches to addressing housing. So So I really wanted to make that point very clear, because I know that's one of those common criticisms. Do I think this is going to fix everything? God, goodness, no. There's a lot more work to do. We will continue to be doing this work. But I do appreciate this opportunity to hopefully open up some more housing choices for individuals that are struggling at this moment in time and finding a place to stay. With Consuelos, the other day, we were speaking with Michelle Williams, who's running Consuelos, and she was saying that for individuals that come in, if there are essentially no other problems, it takes them about 8 months to even get the voucher, and then about another 7 months to find a home. And so we're talking about individuals that have vouchers, and she's saying, we're not, there's no mental health issues, there's no substance abuse issues, we are talking about an individual who simply fell on hard times. They do not have the finances at the moment, and they will be unhoused for what she is saying about a year and a half. We are hoping with this that we can reduce that time in this way, and we will be continuing to look at other, policy opportunities as always, to continue to increase our stock of both affordable as well as workforce housing, because we have an issue in that arena as well. And that was all that I wanted to state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, councilors, I did just want to flag, there was a comment made earlier that this would apply to all housing. There are exceptions on pages 5 to 6, and there's several of them. So just to make sure people are aware of those exceptions.
Thank you. If nobody else wants the floor, I wouldn't mind saying a few things about this proposed ordinance. I used the metaphor earlier tonight when we were talking about our sustainability record of how many boxes it checks, and I want to apply that to this bill as well. Typically, we try to look at a bill as solving problems, and we look at whether it, in fact, addresses real problems in ways that will make a real difference. And I think this bill checks a number of very important boxes. It doesn't say so explicitly, but I think the real purpose, the underlying purpose of this measure is to speak to some of the things we care about as our community values. One is we want to maintain a diverse Santa Fe. We want to make sure that people of all kinds, all walks of life can continue to live in Santa Fe. It's a deep issue for all of us. This bill checks that box. It makes it possible for people who have a voucher, who have a completely legitimate source of income, to be able to find housing and not be sent out of Santa Fe simply because the kind of income it is unfamiliar to some individuals. So it checks the box of helping to keep Santa Fe diverse and maintain the really deep underpinnings of the kind of a community we are. Second, it checks the box for me of social justice. We've talked a lot in the past about other issues that are social justice issues, but they're not always presented as such. We look at questions of, and Councilor Garcia raised the question of what the progress is at Midtown. One of the reasons Midtown is developing the way it is, and our concern for the adjacent neighborhoods is as strong as it is, because we want to be a city that lives our commitment to social justice. We have people today who are being discriminated against, pure and simple. That violates our values. That prevents us from living into our commitment to social justice. This bill checks that box. I think it checks the box of treating everyone in our community equally and fairly and inclusively, and does not discriminate, not only on the basis of income, but frankly on the basis of renter versus owner. I've received some email lately saying that we're being far too accepting of renters, that we need people who are homeowners because they have a deeper commitment to a community simply because they own a home. I find that completely unacceptable. I think it is a false claim, and anything that underlies that claim and gives it credence is not good for our community. And we want to treat everyone in our community, regardless of their means of paying for housing or whether they buy a home or rent an apartment, as a really important part of Santa Fe. So I think the bill checks a lot of boxes. I think it really fills a gap that should not be there in our community. And it demonstrates, assuming we were to pass this bill, I think it demonstrates to the community at large what the values of this governing body really are. It is enforceable. We enforce, for example, wage theft. That's a similar, from my mind, a similar issue where people who are less able to defend and speak up for their own interests need help and need the support of the city government to make their case on their behalf. This, from my way of thinking, falls into a very similar category where we are putting our values front and center, and they are enforceable, and they should apply across the board to all of Santa Fe. And that's why I will be supporting this bill. Any other comments or questions from the members of the governing body? We have a motion and we have a second. Without any hands being raised, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Sí.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes, I'd like the opportunity to explain my vote.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. Councilor Lee Garcia, sir, you have the floor to explain your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having some concerns over the nuts and bolts of how it's going to work. I would like to see and revisit this in the future as to how is it working? Is it working? Can it be improved? Can it be changed? I think that's something that should be important for all of the bills and legislation that we pass through. I really do like the fact that, nobody should discriminate because of the form of payment that somebody would receive. And I would really like to see reports in the future as to how it's working and what type of issues we're having with it. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Madam Clerk, can you take us to the next item on the agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor, the next item is 21. 21 is appointments. 21A is appointment to the Santa Fe Public Library Board. Rose Cohen, appointment, term ending July 2027. And Aurora Vidston, appointment, term ending July 2027.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion to approve and there's a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for me, please?
Certainly, Mayor. Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Sí.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. I believe that completes our agenda